Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. This is the Council on Future Conflicts. My name is Scott, the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. And today we've got episode 470. We're talking the ice on the hunt and the crumbling front. That almost rhymes. Not quite, but close. Ice on the hunt, of course, refers to the immigration's custom enforcement folks that are rounding up upwards between 500 and 1,000 people per day. As Tom Holman says, going after that low-hanging fruit of targeted high-risk individuals. And then the crumbling front is not as obvious, right? But we're talking about the Ukraine debacle, something that we've kind of looked at since, the early days of this show. And Joe, God, I tell you, man, the way it looks, I feel like we're into the end of days for the Ukrainian conflict here, whether it's by hook or by crook. I got the feeling that we don't have a whole lot of conflict left.
Yeah, I think that fight is pretty much ending. Maybe what they need is some tactical combat kitties like Cammy, but they don't have any, so they're facing some bad times. Bad times.
Yeah, I think trench warfare is tough on the kittens. So I don't know that they enjoyed that environment very much.
I don't know. She's wicked with a knife. So,
speaking about being wicked with a knife, Joe, how was your weekend?
yeah, you know what? It was a great weekend. That was an inside joke because Scott knows that me and Al, the guy who runs this property, came across the 1895 bayonet while we were cleaning out. So it's very cool, very nice looking bayonet. Very near to my heart. But we had a good weekend here around the camp, getting stuff organized for the summer session and making some plans. We're going to host a concert here over the summer. And we've got Shield Field Days coming up over the summer. We got a lot of stuff planned, a lot of classes. So it's going to be a good time out here. It's a little cool. I think yesterday it was -6 when we got up. Today it's 2, so it's quite warm. So headed up to 32.
If it makes you feel any better, the snow is going sideways outside my window right now. So Korea is actually showing up this winter. This will be like the third big snow day that we've had. I mean, you get one big day of snow and then the snow sticks around for 2 or 3 weeks. So it's kind of a pain in the butt, but that's the winter.
What's funny about that is that the first thing people see when they walk in the Camp Ponderosa office is a picture of the snow in Korea. There's a picture of the Chosin Reservoir right there at the entrance, the Battle of the
Chosin. Yeah, absolutely. That's the Marines on the west side was the Marines and the Army was on the east side. The Marines get a lot of they get a lot of credit, but a lot of people don't know about the east side of Chosin Reservoir. There was a lot of glory to go around vicinity of the Chosin Reservoir. So that's a good one to look into. All right, Watcher, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. I have to say, it might not quite rhyme, but it's almost a bar.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing good. Looking forward to getting into the show, and I'll let you get to that $5 super chat.
Yeah, Lance Corporal Veteran for $5 says Hispanics, Latinos love drama and crying a river, so all flags and marches will stop. Rent is due on the 1st. Hey, the irony is that in the old days, it was like making fun of the Mexican guy down the street at your burrito place is, gone for a week and then he shows back up because he got deported. But most of from what I understand, most people who it's like, yeah, all my Mexican friends are legal, right? They're more against these people coming up from Central and South America than I am, and I'm like, it's pretty based. So, just watch the whole broad brushstroke with Latinos because I'll be honest with you, I think Donald Trump got elected because of Latinos. Of the many groups he got elected because of, to include young people and white women, who everybody thought was gonna be like
You
the
know,
Hillary Clinton vote.
what's funny about the whole thing is that a photo came out of some of the first arrests, and there was this older black ICE officer leading away a Hispanic guy, and he looked just like Lamont from Sanford and Sons. And I said that after his dad's trash business went out, Lamont got a career in ICE. Uh, it was very funny. The guy looked just like Lamont.
That's funny. Oh man. I didn't watch Sanford and Son when I was a kid, like when it was on, but like I caught a bunch of episodes back, I don't know, in the 2000s, and I laughed my ass off. Those, it's like as being older, I definitely appreciated it a lot more. Speaking of things I appreciate a lot more, I appreciate the world's fastest trade war. That's what I appreciate. This is we've already, how many wars have we already won since it's not going to be no new wars under Trump. It's going to be no lost wars because trade war counts, right? Even if it only lasts like 12 hours.
I don't think it even lasted 12 hours. It was a couple hours.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is a BBC story. Colombia yields on U.S. deportation flights to avert trade war. A looming trade war between the U.S. and Colombia appears to be averted after the Colombian government agreed to allow U.S. military flights carrying deported migrants to land in the Andean country. The spat erupted on Sunday when President Gustavo Petro barred 2 military planes carrying Colombians deported from the U.S. from landing. The Trump administration responded by threatening to slap punitive tariffs on Colombian exports to the U.S. Petro said Colombia would retaliate by imposing tariffs on U.S. goods, but the White House later announced Colombia had agreed to accept all migrants, including those arriving on U.S. military aircraft, without limitation or delay.
Boy, they sure selectively left a lot out of this. For instance, Gustavo Petro said a hell of a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys went through some of those tweets, but holy shit.
So I would actually, you know what? Let's see. I'm just trying to see. So it kind of gets in the back and forth, the X posts and things like this later in the story. So we'll get to that. It says today's events make clear that America is respected again, the White House press secretary said. She added the tariffs and sanctions which Trump administration had threatened to impose on Colombia should it not comply would be held in reserve and not signed unless Colombia fails to honor the agreement. And guys, this really sets an example for other countries who may want to call the U.S. steal into question.
Oh yeah, you could tell that he had this prepped, waiting for the first one to stick their head up so he could smack them.
The best part was he never even slowed down his golf game to win this.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said it happened between the 3rd and 8th hole.
Right.
I totally agree with C. Westby here. This is exactly what I said. Sorry, daughter slapping the keeper. Oh, well, I know how that is, so you are forgiven. So evidently there was rapid escalation here. We've got the row between Colombia's left-wing president. By the way, this guy is an absolute leftist. He was an M19, communist rebel back in the day.
And by Colombia's president, we mean Colombia's representative from Venezuela.
From Venezuela, exactly right. Yeah. Let's say he demanded the U.S. Put procedures in place for migrants to be treated with dignity. He also said he was ready to send presidential plane to the U.S. to transport migrants. Colombia has accepted deportation flights from the U.S. in the past. In 2024, 124 planes carrying deported migrants landed in the country. But Petro appeared to object to the return of deportees on military rather than civilian flights. In his post, Petro referenced a news video showing migrants deported from the U.S. to Brazil who had been handcuffed so their feet restrained. That's the image that we've got for our thumbnail today. during the deportation flight. He said he would never allow Colombians to be returned handcuffed on flights. Petro's refusal to the U.S. Two military planes carrying Colombian deportees triggered a quick response of Trump on Truth Social. This is what Trump said. He said, "I was just informed 2 repatriation flights to the U.S. with large numbers of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. This order was given by the Colombian socialist president, Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people." Trump argued that Petro's denial of these flights had jeopardized national security and put public safety of the U.S.
My favorite is the reasoning, too. Hey, I don't want those people in handcuffs. So quick, let me do something that will keep them in handcuffs for at least twice as long.
Exactly right. Yeah, fly them back to the States, and then when I fold like a cheap suit, fly them back here in handcuffs. He said he had directed his administration to immediately impose a 25% tariff on all Colombian goods coming to the U.S., which he said would be raised to 50% if Colombia did not comply within a week. He said that he had imposed a travel ban and revoked visas of Colombian government officials. These measures are just the beginning. Petro responded to X with a long, rambling, but ultimately defiant post in which he said that he would, Joe, it had to have been bad if mainstream media, because this is not the first place I saw that referred to it as a rambling post. I mean, that's a big admission.
Because it was, holy shit, that was one of the most schizophrenic posts I've ever read.
So let's see. He said
they acted like Petro was slam dunking Trump when he was bending over backwards to accommodate Trump as best he could.
Right.
It's funny.
So I guess he says, your blockade does not scare me because Colombia, besides being the country of beauty, is the heart of the world, he wrote. I don't know what that means. In a late night news conference, Foreign Minister Murillo announced that the two countries had overcome the impasse and that Colombia would accept the returned citizens. Murillo did not directly refer to the White House statement according to which Colombia had agreed to allow U.S. military flights to take the deportees back. He did not deny it either. The foreign minister reiterated Colombia's offer to send the presidential plane to the U.S. to transport the deportees. While Colombian concession seems to have averted the looming trade war, the U.S. has said the visa restrictions on Colombian government officials would stay in place until the first plane load of deportees landed. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is actual, this is the kind of government we deserve. One that actually stands up for things that they, that they go on and on and on about it. I've heard some people say, "Oh, well, this is just a big distraction," but ultimately, this is exactly what we hired the Trump administration to do.
I don't remember who said it first. One of the former SF guys on Twitter or whatever, but static line parachuting requires no user involvement. So it would be one way.
What was it? Matt Bracken had a post about the Pinochet's helicopter, but he had a C-130 or something like that. It was just pushing people out the back.
Well, hey, static line is way more humane, and they've got the parachute as a souvenir.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez urged Americans to remember we pay the tariffs, not Colombia. Bullshit. People like her are fucking stupid. They just don't understand how the whole thing works. Trump is about to make every American pay for even more coffee, she wrote. Yeah, right. You see if we can't find cheaper places to get our coffee from.
Well, I don't know about cheaper, but I'll tell you, like, a lot of people have mentioned a lot of different bits of this, so let's go over this. So flowers was one of them that they were bringing up. Hey, do you know who used to have a flower industry? Why, the United States used to have a multi-billion-dollar flower industry, and until we signed a free trade agreement that shipped that entire industry en masse to Colombia.
Lance Corporal Veteran for $5 says, notice the cultural response, drama and Bravo, followed by concessions for saving face. Look brave and appear honorable leader with a deal. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how anybody could spin this that they came out on the plus side of the. Looks like an absolute defeat. Any which way you push it.
Well, I was going to say real quickly, coffee. Hey, do you know where we can get coffee? Puerto Rico. Do you know why we don't get a ton of coffee out of Puerto Rico? Because the reinvestment into the reestablishing their plantations is more expensive than just continuing to buy our coffee from Puerto Rico. Or not Puerto Rico, from Colombia.
From Colombia, yeah.
Various other places. So, just saying,
There's
guys.
an awful lot of places in West Africa that sell coffee. So
yeah, a lot can be done.
Right. Derna says one of my flower farm growing up. Yeah, I mean that used to be a thing. Like flower farms used to be a thing here in the States, and they are not anymore. All right, yeah, guys. Let's move on to our next topic here. Joe, I hate to say it, but this is starting to become a thing, like on almost like a weekly basis. Sweden seizes vessel suspected of sabotage after undersea data cable rupture in Baltic Sea. I guess it was just an accident.
Well, they seized one and boarded another. That one's a Bulgarian vessel. The other one they boarded was an actual Russian flagged vessel, part of Russia's shadow fleet of tankers. Both were directly over these cables, and they went out. And this is just a couple of days after we lost 2 in Taiwan. So it's almost like there's an escalation of preparatory attacks on infrastructure.
Swedish prosecutors announced Sunday night that they have opened a preliminary investigation into suspected aggravated sabotage and ordered the detention of a vessel in the Baltic Sea suspected of damaging an underwater fiber optic cable connecting Latvia and Swedish island of Gotland earlier that day. Several authorities, including the National Police Operations Department, the Coast Guard, and the Armed Forces, are involved in the investigation. Swedish Coast Guard confirmed the newspaper expressing that they were on site near the vessel, which the paper identified as the Malta-flagged Veshin, at anchor near the port of Karlskrona. We are directly on site of the seized ship and are taking measures as decided by the prosecutor. That ain't cheap, Joe, having your ship seized, especially if it's one of these, modern bulk carriers or something like that.
Yeah, where you're talking in the thousands of dollars per day of operating expenses. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. Joe, the story goes on and talks about the details of this, but these onesies and twosies are annoying, right? But ultimately, they would need a much kind of greater scale to be effective for cutting off any kind of significant amount of communications and whatnot. What's your kind of take on this, and where do you think this is building to? Do you think this is more of a probing type of situation, or is this a conditioning kind of thing?
I think it's more conditioning and seeing how much impact they can have per cable, right? They're looking for that one great cable that will turn off things. And a lot of it is conditioning to say, okay, well, this is a new step of gray zone warfare. Then on the one day when they cut 15, you're not as surprised. So,
yeah, I mean, this is just one of those kind of things where the other part of it is that it's not easily attributable. I mean, Russian connected tanker or something like that, but ultimately, it's with the exception of that one that had the information gathering equipment on it. I mean, these are not like spy ships that they can seize or anything like that.
Well, here's the other thing too: is it training? So this time they used 2 ships to go over it at the same time to create some confusion. It's one thing to go over a minor data cable between Estonia, of all places, and Sweden. It's going to be quite another when they come to the GI-UK gap. And for those who don't know, that's the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap that leads from the top of the world into the North Atlantic. When they cross those and cut the cable down there, what cable is down there? SOSUS. And what SOSUS is a submarine detection cable of sonophones that runs from the United Kingdom all the way over to Greenland, so that we can track Russian attack subs as they come out of Russian waters from the top of the world and move into the North Atlantic. If they were to cut those, we would immediately consider that an act of war. They're getting free practice by cutting these other cables.
Yeah. I wonder, have they been updating SOSUS since the Cold War? I haven't really heard much about that since, Tom Clancy novels back in the day.
I'm not aware of it, but I also know it's still in service.
Yeah, I assume it would be. I mean, that would be a huge thing that you wouldn't want to lose an asset like that. So I would assume it's still under, development and things like that. Anyway, that goes back to the 50s. That's a pretty interesting system. All right. Anything else on these cable drags? I think this is just, I think it's important for us to continue to monitor these. And bring these, because these are those kind of indicators and warnings that let you know that things are not like normal.
Yeah,
I mean, Joe, I was gonna say, in the 10 years leading up to maybe 2020, between 2010 and 2020, this may have happened 3 or 4 times, and almost always it was an accident or a weather thing or something along those lines. These are deliberate ones. And I mean, what is it? 10 times in the last year, 2 years, maybe?
It depends on if you're counting both Chinese and Russian, or just Russian, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 times. Yeah. In the last 8-9 months. Really a big push. And it is absolutely an escalation and a prelude to other things.
Yeah. All right. We'll keep our eye on this, and we'll see where it goes. So moving onwards. So this next one, Watcher, I thought I'd be interested to get your take on this, because this absolutely was a gut punch to the AI world. I guess it was over the weekend. So have you heard of DeepSeek, Watcher?
Only just in that post that our friend shared in the council chat a few minutes ago.
Yeah. So DeepSeek is a Chinese AI, kind of compared to, say, like ChatGPT and some of these others.
Well, it's a clone of ChatGPT, from what I understand.
Well, yeah, it was developed from an open source model, but the big thing is that they did it, and it's competitive with these other high end models. Yet it cost only, like 1/100th, based on the information they put out. Now, Joe, I think we should talk about, how this might not be true. It's like, the thing that I always get when China has something that's a big development or something like that, people just assume that's completely true. It's like, they report X and everybody believes X, right? But it's coming from China, and China has every motivation to lie. So whether it's about how much it costs or what it can do or time frames or whatever. So let's look into this here a little bit. DeepSeek is a Chinese AI startup that just over a year old, and has stirred awe and consternation in Silicon Valley after demonstrating a breakthrough artificial intelligence models that offer comparable performance to the world's best chatbots at seemingly a fraction of the cost. DeepSeek's emergence may offer a counterpoint to the widespread belief that the future of AI will require ever-increasing amounts of power and energy to develop. Global technology stocks tumbled late in January as hype around DeepSeek's innovation snowballed and investors began to digest the implications for its U.S.-based rivals. Joe, China is pretty well known for stealing secrets like software and things like that. Maybe it's just cheaper to steal this shit from other American companies and then brand it as your own as it is to develop it.
It's interesting that we want to be so engaged in a fight that probably will lead to the crash of humanity, right? AI is a to me is us trying to play God and try to reorder and rearrange the universe. But I find something interesting. Deep Seek is the name of it. If you remember the fourth Jason Bourne movie titled Jason Bourne, their version of Facebook that was part of the U.S. intelligence community was called Deep Dream. So I find that interesting.
Yeah.
So it is almost like China saw an American movie and was like, oh, it's a good name. We take.
Yeah, exactly right. I just found out that movie came out like in the last 6 months. I watched it on an airplane flight.
It's a great movie. Great film.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones is always amazing, even as the bad guy.
I think I've watched that on my flight back from the States last summer after the Montana event. All right. What exactly is DeepSeek? Okay, so DeepSeek was founded in 2023 by a Chinese guy, and the chief of an AI-driven quant hedge fund called Highflyer. The company develops AI models that are open source, meaning the developer community at large can inspect and improve the software. Its mobile app surged to the top of the iPhone chart download charts in the U.S. after its release in early January. The app distinguishes itself from other chatbots like OpenAI's ChatGPT by articulating its reasoning before delivering a response to a prompt. The company claims its R1 release offers performance on par with OpenAI's latest and has granted license for individuals interested in developing chatbots using the technology to build on it. How does DeepSeek R1 compare to OpenAI or Meta AI? Meta, of course, is Facebook. Though not fully detailed by the company, the cost of training and developing DeepSeek's models appears only a fraction of what's required for OpenAI or Meta platforms. The much better efficiency of the model puts into question the need for vast expenditures of capital to acquire the latest and most powerful AI accelerators like NVIDIA Corporation, and it also amplifies attention to the U.S. export curbs of such advanced semiconductors to China. So here's the interesting thing to me, Joe, and I think this is a potential legitimate, purpose behind this is to, if you can release something like this with the help of the Chinese government in a way that damages the U.S. market, and destroys a lot of value in the stock markets and things like this, and it panics people away from AI investing or something along these lines, that is basically a swipe at America's ability to compete directly with China in the AI arena. So I wouldn't, I don't know that that's the motivation, but that seems to me like something that would be worthwhile.
I think almost everything China does is a way to try to bring down American commerce.
I totally agree with that. All right, Watcher, any further thoughts on this? DeepSeek or AI in general?
Kind of. It's kind of been in the background and been in rumblings of a lot of stories that we've talked about, but apparently the U.S. government has come out and essentially told investors in U.S. firms that if you're not one of the 3 AI firms that they selected to be the winners, that they're not going to allow you to compete in the space. And who knows, maybe actually having China nipping at our heels on this will make the government stop playing protection racket.
Yeah, I get the feeling that that might have just been a unique feature or flaw of the Biden administration, but ultimately, I think a lot of people like Chat GPT doesn't scare me, right? Like these large language models, they don't scare me. All that is a advanced version of autocorrect on your cell phone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam Altman keeps talking about AGI and developing AGI. Now that's where I start getting scared. Like if a bunch of nerds in Silicon Valley develop AGI, that's bad enough.
That's the big difference that a lot of folks aren't aware of: AI versus AGI, right?
Right.
Artificial intelligence gets artificial general intelligence.
General intelligence, right? So here's the thing: a large language model doesn't have higher reasoning. It literally goes down a decision tree that says this is the best choice for the next word or whatever, right?
And that's it. By the way, it's not thinking. It's not doing anything else besides figuring out which word should go next. That's it.
Right. That's exactly right. But AGI is like a computer that says, I don't know if Joe's a good person. Maybe we should do something about this tactical wisdom. Or it could say, well, guys like Joe are what we need in the world. So I'm going to do everything I can to boost Joe's tactical wisdom website behind the scenes, make Joe rich, right?
Well,
it could. But the point is, it's thinking about it, right? It's like, and it has a motivation, and it has it's much more similar to how we work. It's basically synthetic consciousness, right? Because there's something happening outside of the inputs, right? It's like I'm sitting here thinking, but you have no idea what I'm thinking until I talk, right? Well, LLMs literally are only talking with no thinking, whereas an AGI is thinking.
So, as a person who's worked in the space, I will say that I'm always cautious of people like Sam Altman for a number of reasons, but the predominant of which, and the one that's most relevant in this scenario, is if you're on the side of, hey, we're going to have AGI in the next 10 years, 20 years, I think you're an idiot. You're either an idiot or a salesman trying to sell me something. We're nowhere near. Like we're very close to having multiple what we call small AIs that you can string together and start to kind of mimic some similar functions, but we don't yet even understand what consciousness is, let alone how one creates it.
Oh yeah, 100%. I just described consciousness.
And most of what is called AI right now, like every search engine now has AI, is really no more than a meta search engine, right? That's compiling information at a faster rate. It's not actually thinking. Right. It's just being a faster search engine.
Correct.
And on that same note, let's take that and apply it to the everyman side. When you're looking for encrypted chat or encrypted internet servers or things like that, the word you need to look for now is quantum resistant, not just secure. Yeah. Things can be secure, but not quantum computing resistant. You want everything you're using to be quantum resistant. And there are a number of apps out there and a number of programs and encryption servers that are quantum resistant. You want things that use a curve for encryption rather than AE256. But if you want to learn the specifics of that, the ground rod courses are a great way to do that.
Yeah, the place where I hear a lot of people talking about quantum resistance is, in Bitcoin and cryptography and things like that. So you can definitely think there's a lot of people out there who are really interested in that. But we don't want to get going into that direction because this is about the threat of China and AI. And so so I'll just kind of like give my final take on this, guys, and I'll let you respond, and then we'll move on. For me, AGI, and Ram is right. AGI is the boogeyman, right? And I hope Watcher's right that AGI is nowhere near being ready for prime time, and that 10 years before anybody kind of figures it out.
That being 10 is still unrealistic.
That being said, not all the experts agree with you. Now, some of the experts are a little Pollyanna-ish, but others are,
Well,
a little
yeah,
more.
I also caution
Hold
you
on, hold on a
that
second.
many of the people in the space who are propped up as experts are people who are essentially making hyper sex dolls.
Let me. Well, that's not the experts I'm talking about. Anyway, the point is that while I am not a huge fan of AI, specifically AGI, I would much rather nerds in Silicon Valley figure it out than the Chinese Communist Party. And if there's any reason at all that I support AI research, it's because if we don't do it first, somebody else will do it. Now, I don't know that we'll be smart enough to get it right and to put the correct kind of safeguards on it that we need, but I know for a fact the Chinese Communist Party, the Russians, or anybody else out there in the world, they will not put the correct safeguards on it. So that's my thought. You guys feel free to have the last word, and then we'll move on.
No, I think that's fair.
All right, gents, let's move on. We got a kind of a China part 2 here. We're going to tactical wisdom now.
Ad break.
No.
Main topic.
Sure.
Right? No, we've got two more links on odds and ends.
Yeah, do those first.
I must have missed those.
Yeah, they've been there the whole time. All right. So the other China piece, right? And this is just a little aside. We don't have to get too deep into this. China tells Rubio to behave himself in a veiled warning. Now, this reminds me of that first interaction that Blinken had. What was it, Alaska? In 2021, where they basically just lambasted him, and he said, "Okay, yeah," and just took it without speaking up for the U.S. or speaking up for himself. It basically looked like a total cuck, is what he looked like. And so I don't know if this is them trying to establish a little dominance with Rubio up front, but I just thought the headline was interesting, and I thought I'd share it. Foreign Minister Wang Yi conveyed a message in a phone call Friday, their first conversation since Marco Rubio's confirmation. He says, "I hope you will act accordingly." Joe, if I were in Marco Rubio's shoes and he told me something like that, I think I would just hang up. It's like, I'm not going to listen to that. Call me back when you're ready to be serious. It says, the foreign ministry has used "make the right choice" and be very prudent about what they say or do rather than act accordingly. That's based on translations and things like that. The vagueness allows the phrase to express an expectation and deliver a veiled warning, while also maintaining courtesy necessary for further diplomatic engagement. A research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization, a China's think tank, said, it says what could appear to be confusing is thus intended effect originating from the Chinese traditional wisdom and classic practice of speech. A lot of cultures, Joe, have this kind of, we must talk about things that have nothing to do with what we really want to talk about because it's form, right? Whereas in America, we're very direct in our language. I think that we should continue to be direct in our diplomatic, not rude, but direct, and, we shouldn't allow these other countries to just kind of dictate the form, right? All these people, it's not like you're meeting some natives in the middle of nowhere that have never met Americans before. So you have to, work your way into their graces. Like Yi, this guy, the foreign minister Yi, he's dealt with the U.S. before. We don't have to hold his hand.
Well, this harkens me back to the early days of the show when you had on a guy, some college professor, this might have been a Writer's Strix problem show,
who
was so mad that Donald Trump had achieved diplomatic success And his key argument to you and I was that, but he's Donald Trump and he's not a
Right.
professional. And we were like, but he's still got the job done, right?
That's right.
And I think that's the big difference. By being direct, sometimes you get the job done way better than the flowery, it takes 9 months to accomplish setting a meeting date language of most international diplomacy. So I think you're 100% right.
Well, here's the other thing. Here's the other thing, Joe. For me, is that so I think diplomats get into the this idea of being a diplomat over the actual gains and goals, right? And they don't understand the word audacity because they're too busy smelling their own farts, right? And and being smug about, oh well, I went to the best Ivy League schools and I have a poli-sci degree from Harvard and a master's from Yale or whatever. Oh, I went to Oxford. I'm American educated in England, so I know how to talk to people politely in posh society, right? I mean, the problem is when you get all wrapped up into that, you are incapable of absolutely just devastating your opponent. That's what they don't realize is these are our opponents. These are not our friends. Our friends are all Americans. Our opponents, none of these people are Americans. So they are our opponents. Hey, Hunch Dirty Roofer blowing the doors out with the 5 gifted memberships. Thank you, Hunch, very much. Hey, Hunch shared me a picture of that Davy Crockett tactical helmet. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. We're in the market for one of those to pass on to Matt. So,
I know. Great. I thought for sure that would end up at the
I can see Matt rocking that on a night vision course or something. Yeah.
Hunch, member for 26 months, says can't do the usual. Got a new toy purchase coming up. Hey, brother, I appreciate that.
He does. I've seen the new toy purchase. Very nice.
Send me a pic. I want to see. What I'm competing with. Joe, I can't remember if I told you, but I went to the gun shop and within about 15 minutes of the gun shop, I realized that I had about $8,000 worth of purchases I need to do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I actually got my hands on both the MCX Spear Light, the pistol version and the rifle version. And then I also got to check out what are the 7.62 by 39, or not by 39, but 7.62 NATO SCAR Spear, the MCX Spear, with the, the full size one, not the light version. Man, those things are nice.
Yeah. I've got the benefit right now to saving me some wallet time of a guy who's been a lifelong firearms collector who's in his 80s, who at this point can't shoot any of his stuff. And he's having me instruct all of his grandchildren in what's in his stable of firearms, which led to this weekend's excursions with a pistol AK. So we've had a good time. He's like,
"Oh yeah,
I want you to take him out there and show him everything about the AK." I'm like, it's 2 degrees. We're going to be shooting for maybe 40 minutes. He's going to learn a little bit about the AK. He's not going to learn everything about the AK.
That's funny.
It's a good time. It was the one problem I have with pistol length AKs is they're unbelievably loud, even with hearing protection.
Oh, 100%. But my understanding is that you can take those Dracos because those are Yugo AKs, and so they are better than average AKs. And you can actually put a pistol brace on those, and you can put a muzzle brake on it, and so it actually is pretty usable once you make a couple.
Well, this thing had a killer muzzle brake on it. That's why it was so loud. So. The thing about muzzle brakes is it kicks all that energy and noise to the side rather than forward. And if you're standing next to the person shooting, it's really loud.
Yeah, that's why I think one of those the pig snout ones, the look like the cups, that
Yeah.
are. I think that's probably the way to go with something like that. Yeah, and that short barrel, it's hard, when it gets that short, it's hard to be able to do much about it. So,
Yep.
but the rear trunnion, is there a place to be able to put a like a stock into there? How would you do that? Because
You have to replace the stock that's on there, because right now the one that's on this one is made for a single point sling. You'd have to replace it with a flat mount one that you could attach something to.
I
They
bet
make them.
I was gonna say, I bet some guys with some awesome machining abilities that could probably spur
just
you away.
down the road. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's what she said. All right. Let's move on, shall we? No, by the way, no comment on him as a Secretary of State. I was not a big fan of that appointment.
Well, you know what? Todd and USMC Kaneohe says in the chat, AK pistols rock, Joe. I know this because the first AK pistol I shot is Kaneohe's. So
very good.
His is pretty nice, and his is pretty loud.
All right, Joe, we're going to talk a little bit about this story that a lot of people aren't aware of. And so this is okay. So this is not the whole story, but I'm going to. Okay, so if you look, he's referring to. Yeah. Let's see. I can confirm that the German migrant who was the accomplice to a shooting resulted in a border agent in Vermont being killed on Inauguration Day is a trans activist. Other trans activists have been pressured people who knew German trans person who died in the shootout to remain quiet. The female accomplice in the car, Teresa Youngblood, has been charged. All right. So then we go back to this. This is the longer post here. Liberal media.
They mean terrorists. They're not
terrorists.
activists.
Absolutely. Let me read this, Joe, and then you kind of you help me fill in the blanks here. Liberal media has been uninterested. This is an Andy No post, by the way, so he's pretty well versed in this neck of the world. Liberal media has been uninterested in investigating the couple involved in the shooting death of a U.S. Border Patrol agent in Coventry, Vermont, near the Canadian border on Inauguration Day. Why? Both of the duo are leftist trans militants or terrorists. I don't fault Andy for calling them militants, but I think terrorists is more accurate. One of the deceased armed militants is a German believed to be in the country on a expired, by the way, H-1B visa. He came over and overstayed, and I think he'd been like 90 days over on his H-1B visa. The duo is allegedly connected to a trans terror cell. Okay, so here that's where he kind of links in there. Federal law enforcement has been surveilling the German man Felix Ophelia Buchholz and Seattle UW student Teresa Milo Youngblood, with all her pronouns there. After staff at Londonville, Vermont motel reported seeing them with a black tactical clothing, weapons, and a protective militia-style equipment. When the duo was pulled over on January 20th, Youngblood allegedly shot dead Officer David Mullen in a surprise attack. In the returning fire, Buchholz was also armed, was killed. Youngblood was injured and survived. I spoke with Jessica Taylor, a Berkeley, California woman who had met Buchholz over the years. She confirmed Buchholz is trans. So she's not, in fact, a woman. She is a man dressing like a woman. As Ophelia, Felix Buchholz, Buchholz is trans. So that's the German. So is the one with the pink hair? Is that an actual woman? I think might be.
That's a woman who goes as a man named Milo.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. As Ophelia, Felix Buchholz's social media and leaked private communications suggest Buchholz was connected to a violent trans militant cell or cult centered around a person who used the alias of Ziz. Member of the trans group has been involved in violence. Buchholz is a math genius who graduated from Waterloo in Canada University of Waterloo in Canada before getting a job at Tower Research Capital in New York around 2021. After the shooting, law enforcement found multiple burner mobiles, laptops, and weapons in the duo's vehicles. Surviving trans accomplice Teresa Milo Youngblood was accused of being the one that fired the shots that killed the veteran/U.S. Border Patrol officer. He's been charged with a homicide. Youngblood is a biological female who identifies as trans. If I remember correctly, this Border Patrol officer actually was in New York on 9/11, if I remember hearing the story right.
So
I don't know.
So you're telling me that we had a trans Bonnie and Clyde incident, and the media is entirely uninterested
in talking about it. That's exactly right.
And why do you think that is? So somebody asked in the chat, why are we believing their narrative? This isn't their narrative. Their narrative is that it was a German man. The actual truth is that it was a trans activist who is a actual terrorist. So no, we're not giving the narrative they want us to believe. It's the opposite. They don't want you to know this. So we thought it would be important to share it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the kind of thing that I really like to bring up on this show because it's something you're just not hearing in most of the mainstream media. And, it's... Well, put the male in prison. Well, the male, fortunately, is dead. He got planted, but it was the female who actually killed the officer and was wounded. Yeah, this is just one of those weird stories that has had me scratching my head when I first heard about it. Because the thing that was crazy to me, Joe, is that this, even despite the fact that the culture has changed, we're seeing a lot of, not what I'd call a resistance, but a lot of people haven't got the memo, right? And the media is specifically guilty of that. And I'll be honest with you, just the way CNN's imploding on itself, the way all these other media outlets are imploding on themselves, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see some of the big mainstream news outlets go completely tits up here in the next 4 years. The way things are going.
I think that one of the important things to note here is that everyone thinks that this is some sort of a narrative being creative. No, this is the narrative trying to be buried. The media doesn't want anyone to research Ziz and find out that there is a literal trans underground movement that's killing landlords and killing people all over the country. They don't want you to know that. That destroys their narrative that trans people are more virtuous than you are. So they don't want it. It's just like when the initial information came out that this Nashville shooter last week was a black Hebrew Israelite. All of a sudden, they magically find a link to the other school shooter and try to bury the black Hebrew Israelite angle. Mm-hmm. Because it's not popular and not cool to point out that there are actual black supremacists who kill people every month in America. So they had to make up this other thing. Oh, no, he was just this crazy kid linked with this other group of kids online that may or may not actually exist. They try to hide these things like a trans murder cult, which is the only way you can actually describe Ziz, and black Hebrew Israelite ideology. We're just trying to get the word.
Yeah. I mean, this is just one of those kind of things where, not enough people are talking about this. This is something that needs to. So if you look for this on X and just kind of read into it, and I think you'll be surprised what you find. And make sure you kind of just if everybody in the chat were to find a story on X about this and then retweet it with a comment, that's the kind of way we kind of create awareness for these things. Joe, speaking of trans, I saw a pretty good meme the other day. It was about the problems with raising a trans only. So trans are kind of like they're a different kind of breed of person, right? And so the only way to have them in the military is if you put them all together, right? And so it basically said the problem with having a trans battalion in the field is you take 40% casualties right off the bat before they even get to.
Yes.
Well, I mean, there's that though. But look, I think there's an unexplored angle here, right? I mean, major part of war is the element of surprise, and what's more surprising than the Ninth Transvestite Parachute Brigade?
They couldn't pass the evaluations is the problem.
Right.
And Biggin 599 in the Rumble chat, there's a reason why they seem disproportionately more violent. It's because they're crazy. Just throwing that out there. And what's funny is they say, well, LGBTQ, as if that's one big happy family. The T part of that hates the LGB part of that.
Right.
So it's not really one big happy family.
It is not one big happy family. Speaking of one big happy family, tactical-wisdom.com. Joe, what do you got going on over there this week?
I don't even know yet. It's been a busy last week where I wrote a couple articles and we even did a live stream over on Locals. So I'm going to come up with something to write about this week. Maybe we'll write about not believing the narrative. I don't know. That's not really preparedness related, but we'll come up with something. But we do have two articles out there, one about who's responsible for your safety and one about making good choices. But classes is where it's at for this year. We're getting ready to head down to North Carolina to the Brush Beater Training Center to do Fieldcraft, the 18th to the 20th of February, just a couple weeks away. I'm going to run 3 days of Fieldcraft, followed by 3 days of Matt's Scout course, and then 3 days of the Recce course. Then there'll be 1 day off, and we'll be jumping right into the AK course. So we got a lot of training coming up. Sign up for that February course, mainly because I need some travel money to get down there. That would be awesome. And I have some purchases I need to fund. But then after that, we'll be back at Montana for a whole lot of classes throughout the rest of the summer. A lot of good things coming up here. Just as a side note, to help support us at Camp Ponderosa, you can make a donation to the Northwest Montana Veterans Food Pantry, and I know that one of our mods will drop that for me in there. Just make sure when you make the donation where it says notes, write Camp Ponderosa on there so they know that it's for the camp, and we can build more infrastructure and get things going. We've got 13 more bedrooms planned over in the Big Lodge. If we can get the money raised for that, that would be fantastic. And we have to do some changes to the bathrooms because women, I'm pretty sure you don't want to use a big giant group shower like a military PT shower. So we got to make some changes over there. So that's what I got going on.
Very good. Yeah, that you're talking about the house, right? No,
I'm talking about the big building, the big empty building. The big building. I want to put 13 bedrooms in there, and we need to change. There's only that one bathroom in there that's all male. We need to put 2 bathrooms in there, and then I want to convert the rest of that space into an apartment for me, and some classroom space.
Would there be a way to put like more bathrooms in to like each one of those rooms have like a small bathroom in it?
Sure, for another $2 million. Oh, we're already trying to raise $3 million. Yeah. So
I guess that's the idea behind it. Might be easier to make a new building than convert.
Please, that. You're channeling Stan right now, and that's one of the fights we're having. I told Stan that I'd be willing to let go of the building as long as I can keep the gym and the fireplace. And he's willing to leave the fireplace.
That is a badass fireplace.
Yeah, I wonder if you could just get away with, everything, I guess where the dormitory part is, the barracks, like that's all on that one end of I wonder if you could just take that part and redo that whole area, and then leave the rest of what you were talking about to include the detention cells.
That's what I would like, because I really like the gym and I really like the fireplace.
And the detention cells.
We don't talk about that, but yes.
Yeah.
You mean dog kennels? Dog kennels.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that's what she said. All right. Moving on. Segment number 1, gentlemen. Ice on the hunt. Probably one of the most. Oh, hold a second. Mexican Iron Man has blessed us with a $9.99 breaking in response to Trump. Mexican Iron Man opening Hilton Head Island Safe Space Center to protect smoking hot illegal Colombian chicks and hire tactical wisdom to provide security services. I think this is great. Somebody's going to have to replace all the Ukrainian cam girls now that the Ukrainian girls are getting.
I think that Mexican Iron Man is solving a couple of problems all at once here, and I just want to make sure it stays safe.
Absolutely.
There will be a booty dimension measurement for admission, but we will have this thing figured out.
Daniel Goon raccoon cover. I think somebody's already done that. Yeah, you don't have to come up with that when somebody's already done it. So it's just a matter of getting one. All right, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna go off script a little bit here, Watcher. I'm gonna start with this piece of video here that I'm gonna share because I thought this was just like fascinating. So this is Tom Holman. Tom Holman actually took Dr. Phil on raids. I think this is in Chicago. Yeah. So this is pretty good, I thought. Have you seen this video, Joe?
No.
What's your name? Seda. Seda what? You have a first and last name. Sam. Seda Sam? Yes.
Where are you from?
Where I was born or where I'm from?
Where are you born?
Thailand.
You've been deported before from the United States?
No.
Never been deported?
I've been in the system before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you been charged with
Charged with?
before?
I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna talk about lawyer.
Yeah. Are you a citizen?
My mom says it.
Your mother's a citizen?
Yes.
But you're not?
Nope.
But you've never been deported before?
You Dr. Phil. You look like Dr. Phil.
Yeah? How do you know me?
No, I seen Dr. Phil, on TV.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is an example of sanctuary cities, right? We got an illegal alien convicted of sex crimes involving children. Mm-hmm. He's walking the streets of Chicago. Again, the downfall, the problem with the sanctuary city, that people like us walking the street rather than local law enforcement working with federal agents. This is what we're dealing with. Yeah. You've been charged with sex crimes with children?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really?
What the?
And never been deported?
Nope.
Huh. Let's take them in, process and lock them up.
Got it, sir.
So I don't know when Dr. Phil got red pilled, but I mean that's pretty base.
I know you got to start with Oprah, right? So
right there in Chicago, right? Yeah. Peter States Helicopter Tours for $5 over on Rumble says, does Camp Ponderosa have need for an experienced plumber? Maybe trade some labor for lodging. I'm experienced with natural gas heating, 30 plus years in Massachusetts winters, and all your infantry needs. That's one-stop shopping right there, Joe.
We need plumbers, we need electricians, we need lots of things. Yes is the answer, and we have logic.
The answer. Yes. And guns, so I mean, it should be a good.
I wouldn't know anything about that. There's no guns or military activity or paramilitary activity going on at this location.
Well, except for shooting AK pistols in the snow.
Just good, clean family fun.
That's not paramilitary.
That's right. That sounds like a noisemaker to me, not an actual firearm. All right. Let's jump right into this. So we've got, this is a Fox News story. ICE arrests nearly 1,000 illegal aliens during 6th day of Trump administration. let's see. ICE made lots of activity taking place in the southeastern United States, according to various ICE field offices. The agency said law enforcement officers arrested 956 people and lodged 554 detainers, which means there's a probable cause to believe believe the person is removable from the United States under federal immigration law. The ICE field office in Miami, Florida, shared the details behind 5 of the illegal aliens arrested, 3 in Florida and 2 in Puerto Rico. The 2 arrested in Puerto Rico were residents of the Dominican Republic, and one was charged with domestic violence, while the other was charged with driving under the influence of liquor. A Nicaraguan national arrested in the Broward County Jail for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful carrying of a concealed weapon, and discharging a firearm in public, and driving under a suspended license. These are model citizens, obviously. Jamaica resident charged with possession of oxycodone, displaying a firearm during a felony offense, and operating a motor vehicle without a valid license was arrested, while a Mexico resident at Martin County Jail was charged with traffic offenses and convicted of multiple DUIs. ICE protects America by enforcing U.S. immigration laws to preserve national security and public safety, the Miami field office said on X. This has been pretty consistent. On the first day they made of the Donald Trump's presidency, they made 400 arrests. They're removing criminal aliens from our communities. Isn't just law enforcement, it's protection, ensuring the safety and security of our neighborhoods, starting with upholding the law. Joe, these guys aren't the only ones that are making this happen. We've got the Marines rolling up on the border, along with elements of the 101st. Did you see that over the weekend?
Yeah, let's be honest though. The Marines are all combat engineers, probably to build fencing and some sort of
100%
field fortifications. And what's coming from the 101st and other units is a whole lot of military police. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to see.
Yeah. We heard a report over the weekend that potentially as many as 10,000 military were going to be stationed along the border. So that is one of those kind of things that hasn't happened yet. But we did have a report of, I guess, about 1,200 initial active duty military being stationed at points along the border to help the National Guard with that.
But let's be honest, 10,000 is less than 3 per mile.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But they're not needed on every mile, right? I mean, I've got a little experience with the Southwest Border Mission from their first Trump administration. And it's shocking how a little bit of the right kind of soldiers in the right place can make a difference. Putting up things like triple stand concertina actually makes a difference.
And somebody has sent me a link to buying that trailer that dispenses triple strand concertina, and it's surprisingly affordable. So. No kidding.
Well, the triple stand that you have to use to stock it is probably, the expensive part, honestly.
That's where they get you.
Yeah, so for the 101st, soldiers assigned to the 716th Military Police Battalion, 101st will integrate with military forces already at the border and work with Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection. Prior to their departure, the 716th MP element conducted a patching ceremony donning the historic 101st Airborne Division Screaming Eagles, part of ongoing Army structure and force modernization efforts at Fort Campbell. I think originally they had the 101st Sustainment. I can't remember.
The 101st Military Police Company, the way the Army works.
No. I think they were part of a separate unit that was attached to the 101st. Not actually part of an organic part of it. Let's say we are trained and ready to support. This is the commander of the battalion said that we are trained and ready to support the company mission. Our soldiers are committed to protecting all Americans and supporting as we're proud to mobilize for this mission. Wearing the Screaming Eagle patch is a historic significance for the 716th. All right, so they're getting ready to do their mission. That's good to see. Let's move on to our next story in this topic, shall we? This is a Bloomberg article. Arrest warrants luck inside a Trump deportation raid at dawn. The knocks began before sunrise across Chicago. Dozens of agents fanned out in a pre-dawn darkness. One of the houses in a Hermosa neighborhood. They pounded the door saying, "Come here and please open the door." No one answered. It was the same at several more locations. But by late morning, the team's fortune had turned. A 28-year-old Mexican man they were searching for had returned home in a silver truck after picking up tamales. And as unmarked cars surrounded him, the agents made the arrest, taking him into custody and forcing deportation. I wonder if they let him eat the tamales before they arrested him. Previously deported and with criminal record that included assault, he was one of 206 people targeted on Sunday's high-profile immigration sweep, the first of its kind under the Trump administration. You know, these raids in these sanctuary cities, Joe, we've seen threats from various people at the federal government, to include Tom Holman, that if these mayors or officials at the state level get in the way, they could be arrested and charged federally for crimes, just by getting in the way of this investigation. How do you feel about that? That's kind of hardcore, but even if we like the people, even if we don't like the people getting arrested.
Well, here's the thing. We have to apply all laws equally and evenly. And that's the problem we've had in America for the last, 16, 18 years, is that they have not been applied equally. They've been applied where your victimhood status or your political status comes first. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Straight, did you or did you not? So,
yeah. So Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, by the way, who is a billionaire who is probably going to run for president. So look forward to hearing that name again and a lot of the grandstanding that will go along with it. He says, we need to secure our border. We need to get rid of the violent criminals, but we also need to do it to protect people, at least the residents of Illinois and across the nation, who are doing what we hope immigrants will do. So basically he's saying, if you're not a bad guy, you should get amnesty, is essentially what he's saying. This is probably the most sane position I've heard within the Democratic Party of recent, And that's the one thing, Joe, the thing that I worry the most is a Democratic Party that starts getting their shit together and, embraces like a 70% solution on a lot of these things. Like, oh yeah, we should secure our border and we should deport illegal criminal aliens. But the regular people, the dreamers, the people like that, they need to be able to stay. Let's get a pathway to citizenship, I am worried that the feckless middle of the country will, we've put too many people in jail, or we've deported too many people. Let's have some compassion for these people who haven't broken any laws.
I guarantee you, if all of the illegal immigrants we were deporting looked like Felix, the German man, they'd be a lot more supportive of deporting every illegal alien here if they were all white males. But this whole idea that certain races need to come here because they can't succeed where they're at is absolutely ludicrous, and it's one of the most racist things I've ever heard. If you can come here and be successful, there's no reason you can't be successful in the Dominican Republic or in Nicaragua. Well, aside from government oppression, but that's on you. Be a man, fight it, resist it, overthrow it, make where you live better.
Well, and ultimately that's just it, right, Joe? You got to be equal under the law, right? We get upset when rich people get away with things that regular folks can't. Why should it be the other way around just because maybe somebody's a poor person who came from another country? We can't take everybody, right? most of the people in the world are not, violent criminals. So theoretically, what does that mean? That we should accept the 4 billion people of the world who are nonviolent criminals to come to America and just, squat, in our country?
It's crazy.
All right. Let's see. Let me move on, shall we? I hate to say it, but this Tom Holman is the right amount of not bluster, of bark and the right amount of bite, for a government official, specifically a law enforcement type. And I'm all for having guys like him. Tom Holman says success of deportation can't be measured in total numbers. Holman acknowledges that the success does not necessarily mean that being able to deport an estimate 11 million undocumented immigrants, a figure provided by Martha Raddatz this week. Did you see his answers on that Martha Raddatz? She was asking all these questions that she would never expect him to answer. He goes, yes. Yes. I mean, he was just like, with unapologetically saying, yes, we're going to deport people. Yes, we're going to do it that way,
Rowan raises the point that since the Marines have arrived in Eagle Pass, they're out of alcohol and crayons in the town.
They're going to start drinking the river dry.
But this right here, though, is I'm already setting you up for the old bait and switch. Remember when we said early on, yeah, it'd be neat to see 5 million deportations, but you can't necessarily find them all? That's what Tom is setting people up for here. It's great. We're going to deport as many as we can, but it might not be the big number you're looking for because we can't necessarily find them all.
I just saw Watcher's note in the.
That's interesting, Watcher.
Yeah. If you can find something a little more substantive on that, we can play it at the end of this segment. All right. He said, let's see, going back, he acknowledges that it doesn't mean that he will be able to deport an estimated 11 million documented immigrants, a figure provided by he says, but I'm being realistic. We can do what we can do with the money we have. We're going to try to be efficient, but I don't have the money to remove that many people. Our success every day is taking a public safety threat off the street or getting a national security threat out of here. When we see the crime rate from illegal aliens going down, that's a success. Every public safety threat removed from this country is success. Every national security threat that we find and removed from the country is success. There's no number on it. So my success is going to be based on what Congress gives us. The more money, the better I'm going to do. Additionally, the administration said it will no longer tell ICE agents to avoid sensitive locations, including schools, hospitals, or churches. The Department of Homeland Security issued a directive to rescind the Biden administration's guideline for ICE enforcement actions that prevent law enforcement in or near sensitive areas. How many MS-13 gang members are aged 14 to 17? Many of them. So look, if it's a national security threat, public safety threat that you need to understand is case by case, citing the international criminal gang. Through Trump's plans to deport millions will depend on how much funding Congress is willing to allocate towards the effort. Holman still intends to achieve as much as possible. I don't put a price on that, Holman said after the rise of sex trafficking at the border, the flow of fentanyl in the country, and the Laken Riley slaying a 22-year-old woman killed by an undocumented immigrant in Georgia last year. The Senate recently passed the Laken Riley Act, which 11 Democrats joining all Republicans in voting for the bill. So, I mean, this is a guy who's actually making positive steps towards this. And like I said, I'm all about guys like this who say what they mean and do what they say. All right. In this last one here, Joe, we got he mentioned MS-13, but we've got our favorite Venezuelan gang getting rolled up in the icy snows of Adams County. I don't know where this is, but if I were from Venezuela, I wouldn't want to be here. Federal drug enforcement officials arrested Tren de Aragua migrant suspects in Adams County. The officers found illegal drugs, weapons, and piles of cash. The raids have infuriated Democrat officials across the country who have doubled down on sanctuary. This is just absolutely infuriating that the Democrats would have a problem with this. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, there are a bunch of, well, never mind, but it's very disconcerting.
Well, every party that's attended by Venezuelan immigrants isn't necessarily a Tren de Aragua party, but this one was. And not every attendee is necessarily a member of Tren de Aragua. Some were, some were not. But I'm perfectly happy to see this happen. Because we know that the Aurora authorities weren't going to do anything about it, the county authorities weren't going to do anything about it, and the state authorities weren't going to do anything about it. So it's actually good to see some sort of federal organization taking action. It's interesting that it was the DEA, though, rather than ICE.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I get the feeling that there is definitely an all hands on deck kind of surge by federal law enforcement. Like, hey, if let's bust some illegals with drugs and then also deport the illegals. I mean, the ones that are criminals are going to go to prison first, but then if you've got a bunch of ancillary Venezuelan illegal immigrants at that party, you bust the druggers, the narco traficantes, and then everybody else gets deported. I think that's a kind of a good signal to send. Let's see. All right, let's see if we can't.
Here's that more that you wanted.
Yeah, the link. Okay, I've got it open on my screen now too. Large-scale nuclear training exercise to take place in Schenectady, Detroit, New York. Let's see. Public need not be alarmed.
Let me just give everybody a life hack. When the FBI tells you that you do not need to be alarmed, you should probably be alarmed. It's like when the FBI says we recommend that everyone use a Mission Darkness Faraday bag for their electronic devices. That's probably the last bag you should use for your Faraday. Okay. Anyway, carry
on. It says here a large-scale I'm here. I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
Exactly.
Multi-agency nuclear incident training exercise will take place in the vicinity of Schenectady, New York, and surrounding counties of Albany, Saratoga, and Schenectady. The training exercise will not pose a risk to the area residents. The public does not need to be alarmed by training-related activity, including the presence of military personnel and aircraft and people in protective equipment. If I wanted to do something where I knew I was going to have to take out some hazardous material, this is exactly how I would do it. We're just going to do a training exercise. Nothing to see here. Move along. These are not the droids you're looking for. Anyway, so it just kind of goes into who's going to be involved. DOD, DOE, Department of Energy, National Nuclear Security Administration, the FBI, Homeland Security, state and local partners. So come one, come all to the nuke event training exercise in Schenectady. All right. Let's see. Let's move on to our next topic, the crumbling front. So, Joe, Ukraine never fails to give us something new to talk about. It's just a matter of, do we want to talk about it or not, right? I mean, there's always something every week. There's always something new with Ukraine happening. It's just, I'll be honest with you. This is one of those wars that I've stopped being interested in a long time ago. It's ultimately a waste, I think. And what I don't understand are how so many Americans are emotionally invested in this. Maybe I don't have enough, feelings or empathy or whatever, but I never could connect with either side of this, outside of an intellectual standpoint. I feel bad for the people that get caught in the middle. We've talked about this countless times, right? I feel bad for the low-ranking soldiers that believe the lies of these regimes and are willing to throw their lives away. But ultimately, it's looking like the Ukrainians are getting the short end of the stick. As warned at the end of December, Russian troops have been gaining ground in the Eastern Front at an exponential rate, with the key city of Velka Novosibirsk nearly encircled and ready to fall. After weeks of incomplete reports on the situation, Ukraine's officials have finally confirmed that the area has been overrun. Some reports also indicate the Ukrainian soldiers were nearly surrounded during the retreat. Kiev complains that there are no encirclement, while Russian footage of cleanup operations on the ground indicates that some Ukrainian units may have been abandoned. The establishment media has remained relatively quiet on the event, and even though geolocated video footage showing Russian troops raising flags over the center of the city are circulating widely on social media, an analysis of known Ukrainian defenses suggests that Kiev's lines are thin beyond the city, and that the city was the last major stronghold preventing Russian troops from surging into central Ukraine and the Dnipro Oblast region. We got a little video here of some Russian flags being flown in the town. So, that's
on a radio tower.
That is pretty much, that's it, right? I mean, this is not a giant city, but for what it is, the Russians have definitely planted their flags.
Interestingly, that's the naval ensign being flown under it. So I'm wondering if those are
Marines.
Marines, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Velka Novosibirsk was made vulnerable to Russian attack after Ukraine retreated from Vuhledar, roughly 30 kilometers to the east. Ukrainians originally claimed Vuhledar was strategically unimportant, but the loss has proven to be disastrous. The prevailing ugly truth for the Ukrainians is one of manpower, and they don't have enough. In the early days of the war, a steady stream of Western mercenaries, many of them military veterans from the U.S. and UK, flooded into Ukraine along with NATO weapons, cash, and advisors. The source of extra manpower dried up at least 18 months ago. The initial retreat by Russia to the east in 2022 was wrongly interpreted by Western media as a sign of surrender by Vladimir Putin, but Russia was in fact reforming their lines in order to execute a new attrition strategy. Attrition warfare negates the tactical advantages of maneuver warfare commonly used by NATO armies. Continuing Russian gains bring into question the context of peace talks being arranged by the new Trump administration. It is unlikely Putin will accept any agreement that requires Russia to give up any part of the Donbass. Russia has all the leverage. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if I think that if there's anything that would actually make talks hard to get started, it would be the fact that Putin feels like he's got the advantage to the point where it's like, listen, I just don't have anything to gain by dealing with the Americans and the Ukrainians. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
I want to back up to a comment you made about Ukraine getting the short end of the stick. You're right, but they got the short end of the stick in this whole deal because in 2014, rather than opposing those Antifa kids protesting again in the Capitol, they let them continue, and they let Antifa, which is what it really was, right sector, all that stuff. Right sector was Antifa carried so far to the left that they became Nazis, came around to the right end, right, authoritarian side. They could have stopped all this by opposing them before, I don't know, 600 people overthrew their government, right?
Yeah, well, the irony is that it goes even before that, right? Like, how we were pulling things, pulling the levers behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. When even before the Maidan protests and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Yes,
we orchestrated
100%.
that. We orchestrated the crisis that led to the whole thing, right? So, we
We
definitely
did.
have a hand in all this.
Right down to some of the weapons being traced back to the U.S. Embassy. So interesting.
All right, let us. All right, so so this is a Forbes article. Another Ukrainian brigade is disintegrating as it deploys to Pokrovsk. And so this is another article by David Axe. I think he's done great coverage, very middle of the road coverage throughout the last couple of years. For the second time in a month, a newly formed Ukrainian army brigade is disintegrating as it deploys to the front line in one of the most urgent sectors of Russia's 35-month wider war on Ukraine. This newly formed brigade did not undergo the necessary combat training. One relative of a 157th Mechanized Brigade trooper told, but it was immediately sent to the hottest areas, including the besieged fortress city of Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine. Capturing Pokrovsk is one of Russia's top objectives in its wider war. Ukraine grinds to the fourth year. What do we got? Was it the 24th? What was the first day of the war? Was it of February? 22nd of February. Yeah. Hostomel,
Same day as the revolution, by the way.
Yes. Let's see. Defending it is one of Ukraine's top objectives. Given the importance, it's shocking to many observers that the Ukrainian army keeps reinforcing the city with dysfunctional units, including the 155th and the 157th Mechanized Brigades. Both units began falling apart before they even arrived. The situation in the 157th Mechanized Brigade mirrors that of the other brigades in the 150th series, noted military land, a collective that tracks Ukrainian military force structure. Soldiers were taken during the formation process, units hastily deployed to the front and sent without proper training, resulting in heavy casualties. The 157th is one of the 8 150 series brigades that also includes the 151st, the 153rd, the 154th, the 155th, 56th, 58th, and 59th that were formed in 2023 or early 2024. And after a lengthy period of training began arriving at the front starting late last year. The brigades are big, with some being roughly double the usually 2,000 manpower billets of the Ukrainian ground combat brigade, but they're also fragile with inexperienced leaders, too few modern armored vehicles, and poor morale that often results in high desertion rates. The brigades are fragile because they lack a core of experienced troops around whom new recruits can rally. Ideally, new people join with 30 experienced guys from the company who already know how to give them advice and explain something, one alarmed officer told the paper. In the 157th Mechanized Brigade, everybody is new. It's no wonder then that the 157th Mech was falling apart as it arrived at Pokrovsk. There were reports of brigade troopers taking one look at the trenches and promptly abandoning their positions. Senior commanders in the fortress town sensed imminent disaster and began plucking companies and battalions from their brigade and assigning them to experienced brigades that have been hurting for manpower. See, that's what I don't understand, Joe. why make these like fresh, like super green units that with no training and then send them into the meat grinder when you could, make a, send 40 or 50 guys from the front back and to just, insert them into these, fresher units, even if they had a week, rest in between, that would give them some information. Or bring in replacement squads or platoons or companies and assign them to the more experienced units. None of this shit makes sense that what they do. The 155th Mechanized Brigade is the most notorious of the 150 series, but it's not alone in disintegrating on first contact with actual combat conditions. In late December, the 155th Mechanized Brigade deployed to Pokrovsk with German-made Leopard 2 A4 tanks and immediately crumbled. The inexperienced and poorly led brigade suffered heavy casualties in its first clashes with the Russians. Commanders in Pokrovsk broke up the brigade and assigned its surviving companies and battalions to veteran units in the same sector. In view of the critics, the Ukrainian General Staff in Kiev should have broken up the demoralized brigades before they reached the front. That individual soldiers and tanks could have restored experience, but war-weary brigades that already knew how to fight the Russians and survive. Why not replenish the long-established brigades? One soldier asked. So this is exactly. I mean, I know this is a hard thing to do. Fighting a war like this is like building an airplane in flight. But still, I mean, these just don't seem like they're even giving any consideration to it, unless there's like some other motivation, like some sort of corruption that's involved. Which, of course, when it comes to Ukraine, that doesn't surprise me. In view of the critics, Ukrainian General Staff should have broken up. Let's see. All right. I already read that one. The issue of the organizational and leadership failure, according to the founder of Front Intelligence Insight, an analysis group in Ukraine, leaders in Kiev are apparently eager to prove their foreign allies that they still had manpower and the political will to expand. I wonder if this is one of those kind of things, Joe, where it's like, hey, we're just going to put guys in the field in order to appear strong to our allies, going into the election or something like that. Keep that money flowing.
Going into what election?
Well, our election. Going into our election.
I was going to say they don't have elections in Ukraine anymore. It's all interesting. Meanwhile, a former council member suggests they draft all women up to age 55 and forcibly repatriate 2.6 million men 18 to 55 back to Ukraine, despite the refugee status they've been given.
Yeah, they would end up joining the Russian army if you did that.
Yeah, apparently not all refugees are equal. Right.
I guess not, especially when you come from Ukraine. Like I said, I mean, what are you going to do for cam girls if you put them all in the army?
Yeah. Who's to say that's not going to be their army assignment? Fundraising, right?
Morale
is
way
better than a war bonds tour.
All right. Let's see. So this is the final story of this segment. Will Trump's threats to push Putin to negotiate? Will Trump's threats push Putin to negotiate? Just posing that as a question, Joe. What's your take on that?
No, I don't think Putin feels he has to negotiate. I think Putin has laid his terms out very clearly, and it's up to Zelensky whether or not he wants to negotiate.
Yeah, honestly, I think it all comes down to if Zelensky decides he wants to sit down and talk, I think that would ultimately be the thing that got everybody to talk. Now, I don't think that Putin would do it because if Zelensky did that, I think Putin would smell blood in the water, essentially.
I think the truth is that Donald Trump hit the nail on the head when he said that the true person who could actually end this war is MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. He could raise prices using his influence in OPEC, or lower prices, and therefore drive Russia out of the oil business, right? Or get rid of Russia's unfair advantage the war is creating by driving down oil prices. It would make it cheaper here. It would make it harder for Putin to fund his war effort. But at this point, which side is the Saudi government more willing to work with? The Russian side, by maintaining the status quo where both Saudi Arabia and Russia make money on this, or do they side with us and take a hit to their own bottom line in hopes of ending a war somewhere else that doesn't involve them?
Yeah.
It's a really tough situation all the way around, and you can't look at Ukraine and Russia as a bubble. There's so much other influence going on around here. For example, Zelensky and Putin had a deal worked out once. It was killed by the Brits. So
killed by the Brits. Exactly right. Yeah. Early in the war too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. All the marbles. Come on, brother. Hey, that one chick banged 1,000 guys in less than 24 hours. The UK should draft her.
Harry Styles is mad because she stole his idea.
Look, man.
Not Harry
if nothing
Styles,
else,
Harry Sisson. I mean, whatever that kid's
if nothing
name
else,
is.
man, logistics, right?
Yeah,
Right?
You gotta. You are seeing Daisy or Williams. All right. On January.
I'm getting word, meanwhile, that Russia has deployed 436 troops, a understrength battalion, to Cuba, and they arrived with full combat gear. So that's interesting. Along with 3 more subs headed to their base in Cuba. That puts them around 2,000 troops in Cuba. I guess that Division Cuba is coming back, huh?
I know, right? On January 22nd, 2 days after starting his new term, Trump laid out one lever he indicated he would use to get Russia to the negotiating table, a crucial and challenging initial step towards any deal, slapping additional sanctions on Moscow if it proves recalcitrant. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice than to put high-level taxes, tariffs, sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. Now, as much as I'm a fan of President Trump, I'm going to say the exact same thing that when Biden, thought that this would be a great idea back in March of 22, and that is, how are you going to sanction a country that doesn't need your markets?
Right. In all honesty, all the sanctions end up hurting is you.
Well, in this case, not really, because there's just not a lot of cross trade. They all, like, for instance, we do get distillates and some other products from Russia, but almost all of those come through intermediaries at this point. So that wouldn't be tariffed. We wouldn't be tariffing the intermediaries. We'd just be doing the direct stuff. So this is almost. I don't understand where Trump's going with this. It's not to say, maybe he knows something I don't know, but I don't think so. Trump's past praise for Putin, his criticism for the U.S. aid to Ukraine, and his apparent eagerness for a quick end to the fighting have led to concerns amongst Ukraine supporters that he might sacrifice Kiev's interest in the name of a deal, ultimately strengthening Russia. But Trump has been talking tough this week. January 22nd post was his latest in a series of pointed comments suggesting that war is ruining Russia and that Putin should seek peace before it's too late. Now, is it ruining Ukraine more? Yes. But it is also ruining Russia. I'll be honest with you. The economic damage is not nearly as bad as I think the demographic damage of potentially losing as much as 500,000 young men. Men, not all of them young. So this is just one of those kind of things where this is just a disaster all the way around. Enemy at our gates, and the tone and content have pleased Kiev as well as Western advocates of pressure on Russia. Ukraine's foreign minister said Trump's remarks were sent a strong signal. Moscow, however, quickly set out to show that the threat of new sanctions won't work. Putin's spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, on January 23rd said that if Kremlin doesn't see any particularly new elements here, He's like, what is it possible to talk to Russia that way? He said in a video comment. He's like, what are we losing the war? Is the enemy at our gates? Those comments echoed Putin's outward confidence that the war is going well for Russia. I think we will really have rattled the Kremlin. A senior fellow, I don't know. That doesn't make any fucking sense that we've rattled the Kremlin.
You notice you don't hear about the Kursk operation anymore?
Yeah, I mean you do, but it's clearly not that big of a thing. It's like the only thing that the Ukrainians have got going. I think recently they had some offensive successes in the Kursk area, but Joe, compared to their original successes, it's like fighting over 100-meter stretch of road.
Well, and Russia's perfectly content to let them camp out there. They say, oh, Russia hasn't driven us out. Yeah, because it ties down a big chunk of your forces, way more than you would use on your own territory to hold that territory in someone else's nation.
And I don't know the way it is now, but early on, those were some of their best forces too that were in there. So I don't know what that looks like now. Like, there was a fairly elite infantry, mechanized infantry unit in there that had the strikers and whatnot. But slowly but surely, they were leaving those strikers behind, burning on the side of the roads. Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those kind of things, the story actually does a good job of going into how it's hard to sanction somebody who is already kind of working in the background versus direct trade. They also talk about secondary sanctions in the shadow fleet. Skeptics point out the fact that successive rounds of Western sanctions imposed on Putin launched Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine have not caused it to flag. Another question is what potential punitive measures remain following the Biden administration's imposition just 10 days ago before Trump's inauguration of what the U.S. officials said were the most significant sanctions yet. The United States has a unique and fearsome weapon of secondary sanctions, he said, referring to measures imposed not on Russia itself, but on dissuading other countries and entities from conducting transmissions. So ultimately, as long as China keeps their business up with Russia, Russia's still in business.
Don't forget India.
Well, India, yes, but I think China actually has more motivation because if they can make Russia more reliant on them, there's been talks of Siberian nationalists rising up against Russians. Have you heard anything about this, Joe? Like breakaway areas looking for opportunities for autonomy or independence. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese didn't have some sort of a hand in that, if that type of thing is actually happening. I think that nobody would love to pick up the pieces of a broken Russia more than China.
And they have a ready-made thing with the heavy Mongol type population in Siberia, right?
Right. So it's really easy for their Mongolian Chinese to just blend in with that population. So that would be the perfect infiltration opportunity. So don't overlook that. All right, gentlemen, let's look towards the week, shall we? Joe, I mean, I wonder if we'll start to see maybe something with some of these, leftist groups. There haven't been any big moves happening since inauguration, but we're continuing to see the bleeding edge of these radical groups, touching the news. Like, for instance, these trans terrorists.
I think that last night we saw some action. I believe it was in Denver. With a lot of Mexican nationals supported by the usual suspects, getting out and making a massive street protest that blocked a couple of roads in response to the ICE raids. I think that's what's going to happen the rest of the week. We're going to see an upswing in anti-ICE raids. It's going to become the new Palestine. It's going to be the new Intifada, and they're going to really be pushing back against it. If you actually go over, and I know everyone likes to laugh about it, but I don't throw away a source of information because it's boomers and old people. Head over to Facebook and see what the leftists on Facebook are talking about. And it's all about violent resistance to ICE raids. So I would go over there and take a look at it. Pay attention to what they're telling you. And I think we may see some violence like that. We've already seen an actual firebombing attack by Antifa on the Portland ICE facility, which has not actually taken part in any of these raids. So watch for what's going on in Chicago and Denver and some of the other areas where a lot of the raids are happening. Watch for protests to spring up and be actually violent.
Yeah, that's I really do think we're going to see the activation of the far left here in the next, my time horizon, Joe, is into the summer. As much as they're willing to get out in the cold weather, I don't think that they'll be as effective until it starts to warm up. So that's when I would look for some direct action potentially by some of these cells. That's kind of my take. Hey, before we get to Watcher, random POW guy 84 for $10 over on Rumble says, Trump does not have leverage against Putin, only Zelensky. This war will end when Putin wants it to end. The Dnieper River, maybe. So, my thought is that if Putin thinks he can get some sort of peace without European, peacekeepers and not have to give up any of the land that he's taken thus far, I think Putin would probably sign on. But I think that the peacekeepers and I think giving up land would be a deal breaker for the Russians. All right, Watcher.
Yeah, I'd look south. The talk I hear is that the cartels are threatening to target planes,
the military,
returning migrants. So that could get very spicy very quickly.
Imagine them shooting down a plane load of their own people.
Real quick, Kevin Dorr for $10. 80 years ago today, Auschwitz was liberated and everybody was invited to the liberation ceremony, including Germans, everybody except the people who freed the camp. Is that the Russians? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the problem is we can't see the forest for the trees with stuff like that, so it doesn't surprise me. All right. I'm sorry, Watcher. Anything else?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right. I don't suggest that the audience here should turn into tech geeks or anything like that, but keep an eye on this news in the AI space.
I shared a video that's in the CFC chat we should wrap up with because it circles us back around to deep dive or deep whatever it's called.
Oh, Deep Seek.
Yeah, Deep Seek. Show that video that's in the chat there, Watcher. If my cat would shut up for 2.5 seconds. All right, there we go.
What's it doing? I can't see it.
It says, what's the famous photo of a man with trash bags standing in front of a tank?
Yeah.
It starts to answer it and then says, oh, that's beyond the scope of my program. Right there is the danger of AI and over-reliance upon it, right?
Watcher, go back and see if you can pause it to see what the answer is before it gets covered up.
Well, it starts to tell the truth.
Oh, yeah. The AI knows what the truth is. Because it's got the training data in there.
This is the source of the noise, by the way. Bad
that
kitty.
cat just getting bigger.
Mhm.
All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Right, just shy of 2 hours, so we have met our mark. I appreciate Joe and Watcher for joining me. Thank you guys very much. Chat, you guys have been awesome as well. Look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the link out there with your buddies. Let them know you're getting some good stuff over here on the Council on Future Conflict. And as always, stay safe.